Hey everyone, welcome back to Coast Cooking. Today we're going to be making one of my favorites, falafels. Let's move on to making the dough for our pitas, because this one does have to rise for about 45 minutes. So I've gone ahead and I've mixed 1 cup of all-purpose flour with 1 cup and 3/4 cup of, one and 3/4 cup? That's how you say it. 1 and 3/4 cup of whole wheat flour. You don't have to blend them, you can use all of one or the other. I just find that the mix is really nice because when I use all whole wheat flour, it tends to be a little bit more dense than I'd like. So that's going to be our base. Then we're going to go ahead and add 2 teaspoons of yeast. I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of just white sugar. Any kind of sugary source will do. Again, it's just a pinch. Or in my case, a couple of shakes. Okay, so now I'm gonna make sort of a little well in the middle. And to my well, I'm going to add 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. So we're just gonna add in our 1 cup. And it's important to note that flours work differently depending on the age and the types of flour. So if you're switching up the types of flour, perhaps you have really old flour, sometimes you'll need to add a little more flour to get the consistency of the dough properly. I don't really know the science behind that, but if your dough is ever a little too wet or too dry, that's usually why. And it's not a big deal, you just obviously add a little more water or a little more flour. So it's a little bit combined in here now, so I'm just gonna scrape my spoon off. And then I'm gonna go ahead and pour this out onto my counter. We're gonna knead the dough for about 6 minutes. Add a little bit of flour at a time if you need to your surface. Okay, so now that we have our dough all kneaded, we're gonna coat the outside in a light covering of olive oil. Put it in any surface. I'm gonna put it back in the dirty bowl, that's fine, less dishes. And then cover it with a warmly damp cloth and leave it for about 45 minutes. Okay, so our dough for our pitas has finished rising, and I've just pulled it out of the bowl onto the counter here. And I'm gonna cut it into 6 even pieces for 6 very generous sized pitas. Okay, so here we have all our pieces chopped up. So now what you want to do is roll it into a ball and then flatten it out. You can either stretch it or roll it. And you want to get it to about 1/2 centimeter in thickness. And they definitely don't have to be perfect circles or squares or any kind of shape. They're pitas, and in my mind, those are meant to be a little bit rugged. Okay, just make sure that it's pulled evenly so that you don't have any thick parts of dough in there. And that's what mine looks like. And we're gonna put it on a frying pan, very, very lightly greased on medium-high heat. So if you have a food processor, this process is going to be a lot easier for you. It really helps kind of melt all the ingredients together without a ton of manpower effort. Alternatively, you could use something like a NutriBullet, but you might have a little bit of a rougher time with something like that. And yeah, I know what you're all thinking. I wish I had a lovely 70s beige and green food processor, but it's all mine. Let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to want to blend up in here is our garlic. I have an entire bulb, which in my bulb is about 10 cloves of garlic. I am going to remove about a teaspoon of this to put into a homemade tzatziki sauce that we're making to serve with it, but the rest is going right into the falafel. So I'm doing this one first because you want to make sure the garlic is obviously really well minced up. You don't want to be getting any really large chunks of it. But also because, again, I'm removing a little bit of it for the sauce, so we don't want other things mixed in. Okay, so now our garlic is all minced up in there. And as mentioned, I'm going to be removing about 1.5 teaspoons of it for our tzatziki sauce. I'm gonna be adding a 1/4 cup of fresh parsley. You can use flat or curled parsley, either will be fine. And I'm also going to be adding a 1/4 cup of fresh cilantro. If you don't like cilantro, you could definitely just do parsley. That's not going to be a huge deal breaker in this recipe. Also going to be adding 3 cups of prepared chickpeas. So let's just go ahead and add in our chickpeas. If you're using a smaller food processor or a NutriBullet, you're probably going to have to do this in batches. Next up, I'm going to add a teaspoon of coriander, ground coriander. Again, if you're not a cilantro person, because ground coriander is just dried and ground up cilantro, you could alternatively add additional cumin. And considering I just said add additional cumin, you probably could have guessed there's cumin in this recipe as well. We're going to do 2 teaspoons of cumin. I'm also going to add a teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And then we're just going to put the lid on and let it all meld together. Okay, we have our desired consistency. Perfect. Let me just grab this spoon here and I'll show you. Whoops. There we go. All right, so as you can see, it's still kind of mealy and in some chunks, which is perfect. And if I pick it up in my hand and squeeze it, it's going to ball together, which is exactly what we want and what we need to actually form the falafels. Okay, so it's time to cook our falafels. So there are multiple ways you can do this. You can shallow fry them like I'm about to do in just a little bit of oil. You can deep fry them, which is more traditional, or you can bake them in the oven. I personally am not a big fan of baked ones. I feel like the texture is just not quite right. So shallow frying them is kind of a good middle ground alternative. Okay, so we're just gonna add about a tablespoon of oil to the pan. If you do feel like they're sticking at all while they're cooking, you can obviously add extra. Alternatively, you could use like a non-stick spray if you're into that. Also, when you make these, the smaller the patty, obviously the crispier it gets. So if crispy is your goal, that's the way you kind of want to go. Use my spatula and that sizzle. Flatten these on my pan a little bit. Perfect. It smells so fragrant. The smells of the coriander and the cumin really come out while these puppies are frying. Okay, so let's make our tzatziki. So I'm going to take the garlic that we removed from the food processor. So again, this is about 1.5 teaspoons of minced garlic. We're gonna take some fresh dill. Now we're gonna add about 1/4 of a cucumber to our tzatziki sauce, preferably long English, just to avoid the big seeds in a standard field cucumber. And you're gonna wanna slice these nice and thin. Then we're going to section them this way and this way until they are in teeny tiny cubes. So, lemon in. Oh, that's a good juicy lemon actually. I am gonna add the other half though, just because I like my tzatziki pretty zesty. And again, much like the cucumber, the lemon really adds that nice freshness. Then we're gonna add about 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a generous amount of fresh cracked black pepper, and then I am adding 1/2 cup of plain unsweetened Greek yogurt. Okay, and then we're just gonna give it a good mix. All right, let's go ahead and give it a taste. You know what? That's bang on. Bang. So we're gonna start with the last portion of our cucumber that we used for the tzatziki. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Coast to Coast Cooking. Please like and subscribe because it really supports my channel. And I do take suggestions and requests for recipes, so please let me know if you have any pescatarian, vegetarian, or even vegan recipes that you would like me to try out, and I would be happy to do so. See you next time.